Hello and welcome to Ant RC. This is part of my MC6 build. I think it's part 4, I believe. So the chassis is, it's a bit dark here, but the chassis is complete and it's all together. The last time you saw it, it was pretty much in this state, but now everything is bolted up as it should be. So I've had a real nightmare with the servo that changes the gear in the gearbox. I don't know why. There wasn't a lot of space down there. I used the original steering servo for the FTX Mauler, and the servo arm's quite thick, and it's a bit of a mission getting in there, and also getting this orientated the right way so that it doesn't slide and hit the chassis rail. Anyway, we have got my new Traxxas radio gear, because that's what I use, is my trusty Traxxas radio gear there and everything else. We've got this is the original ESC from HPI, the FJ, and a battery hooked up, just to show you that's set up on the rocker switch on my transmitter, that when you hit the switch it changes the gear. Fantastic. So this is low gear, so crawler mode. Switch it, that's high gear. So that seems to be working absolutely fine. So if I turn it over, this is actually the top of the chassis now. So I'm waiting for the servo that's in the post at the moment, the steering servo. That's got to go in. All of the braces are in now. I presume that they fix the body to the chassis, I would guess. Don't know yet because I haven't got that far into the manual, but they're all fixed. One thing I would say, which it doesn't particularly say in the manual, is that before you go to tighten the chassis up, I would, because there's bolts, as you've seen in my last video, there's bolts either side here, and before you tighten everything up, I would make sure you get the gearbox in place, the servo sorted, make sure that you're happy with how it slides backwards and forwards, because I tightened it up and I was forever loosening it, so I can say it correctly, and then having to do it back up again. So that was a bit of an issue. Lesson learned. I'd be interested to know if anyone else has had as much of an issue as I did getting this to work properly. Be interested to see your thoughts, but it's working nonetheless. So again, I'm not an expert builder, this is my first proper kit build. Ambitious project, I know, but I like to take on a challenge. So what's the next point? I'm just going to have a quick jump cut to go on to the next thing. Welcome back. So the other steps, the link arms have been put on to each axle. So you've got the front axle here, and obviously the link rods go backwards, and they've had the little ball races put in there, and they're all secure. The same with the middle axle, obviously facing backwards, and then the rear axle. So this is in preparation for mounting the axles actually onto the chassis and to get it rolling. So that's been done. We put these to one side. The manual is not as scary as it looks, because if you go from the point that I just showed you, which was here, where all the braces go on the chassis, that point here has been completed, so I'm just waiting for the servo. So that's the steering arm. You then get into building the axles in the manual. So you go step by step each one, and that goes to building all the internals. Now of course the axles are already pre-built, so this saves a lot of time. I did, as you may remember in my other video, strip them down and change the gears. If you haven't seen that, if you look at my, I think it's the first part 1, I went through changing the gears to the hardened steel ones. So there's a lot of pages here that go through the axle process, and of course, as you can see, putting on the link rods here. So I was very careful to measure them. So you measure the length that they are before you put the end, screw the end caps on, and then afterwards they need to be a specific length. So that's been done very carefully. The next thing is, you keep going through the axles. So that's all done. Now we're on to the interesting bits, so the shocks. Now the shocks, like the axles, are already pre-built, so putting the springs in, filling them with oil, that's all been done. The bits that aren't done are putting the end caps on, like the ball races as well. So I've just done that, and then if you look here, these are the other link rods that go from the back of each axle onto the chassis. Now these have all been put together and measured. There they are, as if by magic. Doesn't take very long, a little bit time consuming, making, measuring them, making sure they're as they should be. So they're all done and ready to go. The next thing I've done is, as per the instruction manual here, is put all the shocks together. Well, not together, sorry, they're pre-built, but just screw the end caps on, and then put the ball races in as well. So, if that's the correct name for them. Apologies if it's not, I'm sure someone will correct me. So the next step would be to put the springs on. Now I was a little bit confused by this, because if you look at this, you think, well, where does the centre of the shock go? And I don't tend to look further forward in this manual, so I haven't skipped ahead, I've just taken it one step at a time. But what does happen is the fact that the springs are separate to the shocks. So the shocks mount at the back of the axles here, and they're separate to the springs, which is not something I've seen before. It's quite interesting, so we'll see how that performs. I'm glad it's got shocks, because I'm quite looking forward to that. When I've watched, the big trucks, nothing wrong with those leaf springs, but they just seem to roll a little bit better, roll over the bumps. Seems to be a little bit, it's drive more realistically, so I'm quite pleased about that. So going back a page, this is the stage I'm at next. So I need to mount the springs. It says use Loctite with the mount at the bottom, so that obviously needs to happen with each shock. The springs, which are in that bag somewhere, there's 4 black springs and then 2 red springs. So I'm assuming the red springs being harder, that they will be on the front. It doesn't actually say in the manual, which I've looked, again I'm going by this manual really kind of carefully and checking and double checking, but it doesn't appear to. But the fact that there's 4 black ones for the middle shock and the rear shock, sorry, middle axle and the rear axle, I can only guess that the reds are at the front. Hopefully that's correct. I can't see why it wouldn't be. The manual still, what I will say is pretty good. I'm quite impressed with it. It's very easy to follow. The only bit that I had a slight gripe with was the, if I go back a few pages, is getting the servo in here for the gearbox. Now that was a swine, and it did not go in like it said, and I had to mess with it. So this is why I haven't done any videos for a while, and I haven't made a massive amount of progress, because it has taken some time. It's been quite frustrating, probably down to my own incompetence, I would probably suggest, but you know, you live and learn. One thing I did notice is that it doesn't really matter, but again, so I was being really careful. In this bag here, you've got lots of these. There's loads of look like air fits kind of forget what you call them, trays if you like, or you know, all the collection of parts that are kind of tied on with plastic or linked on with plastic. There's about 6 of these, 7 of these. They've all got the same parts on, but they're all called the same number. So when I looked at these, you know, it's quite obvious they're the same, but you got a number here, 23506, and then both of these are 23504. You then go over the page and go to a different axle. It then says that those parts are 20205. Now there isn't a 20205. All these 7 trays here are 235s. They've all got the, you know, 01, 02, 03, 04 on them, but it didn't confuse me for very long, granted. But I just, if you were following that, you know, then you'd sit there and think, well, it's a bit confusing. I don't know why that's happened. Maybe it's because it's from a different, you know, there's multiple kits, typo, don't know. But you know, it's not a big thing. You can tell what one of these look like, right? So it's not a massive deal. But yeah, that's the only gripe, which is a small one. Now, compared to some of the manuals I've seen for planes that I've built, this has been absolutely superb, and I've not really struggled at all, and I'm really getting really quite excited about it. You can see just in here the springs are in there and they're ready and waiting, so that will be the next step. I am at the moment trying to, you know, allocate some time every day, you know, family and work, and it's quite difficult to get the time. I'm trying to allocate at least 20 minutes every day if I can, or every other day, to crack on with the build, because you know, I'm really looking forward to progressing, and it's given me a buzz. So I hope you've enjoyed this update video. Apologies that there's not been a huge amount of progress, but we're getting there slowly but surely, and no big mistakes so far. So that's it for now, and thanks for watching, and keep looking at the channel for many other videos. More 4K coming soon, and more build videos coming soon, and it's going to be a big surprise. Andrew's got a little surprise coming soon. There will be an unboxing video in the next week or so, hopefully, maybe week and a half, so please stay tuned for that, because that will be very exciting. More stuff coming up for the channel. Okay, speak to you soon. Thanks again. Bye.